Hello and welcome to a special Q&A recording of Wolfwalkers, one of the 50 official selection titles at the 45th Toronto International Film Festival. My name is Kiva Reardon and I'm the lead programmer of Contemporary World Cinema. And I'm thrilled to be here with directors Tomm and Ross Stewart. Tomm was born in County Down, Northern Ireland and raised in Kilkenny, Ireland. He studied classical animation at Ballyfermot College in Dublin and co-founded the animation studio Cartoon Saloon. His films include The Secret of Kells, Song of the Sea, the omnibus feature A Prophet, all of which screened at the festival. And Ross is an Irish painter, illustrator, and animator. His collaborations with Tomm and Cartoon Saloon include work as art director on The Secret of Kells, concept artist on Song of the Sea, and co-director on a segment of The Prophet. And he was also a concept artist for Paranorman. And Wolfwalkers is his feature directorial debut. I would also like to thank you, our audiences, for joining us here today. As an organization still impacted by COVID, we need the support of our audiences so that we can continue to present films to future generations. And of course, the most important part, this film is eligible for the People's Choice Award, and you can vote for your favorite films at tiff.net/vote. Tomm, Ross, thank you so much for joining us. I love your setup. It is by far the sleekest one of any of these that I've done so far. As I mentioned in your bios there, you're familiar with Tiff.
Oh yeah.
Cartoon Saloon's work is I think shown multiple times. So thank you for being back. I know it's in a weird form, but
Yeah,
here
I
we.
usually like to visit in person. The last time I was there was for Breadwinner, Nora's feature that showed there a few years ago. So maybe in the future when the virus gets under control. But I just want to give a shout out. You complimented our setup, but we're in Young Irish Filmmakers, which was kind of our alma mater too. We both were members of Young Irish Filmmakers as teenagers, and they've very kindly accommodated us for this. So just want to give them a shout out too.
Oh, that's very no, it's very kind, and it's these nice moments of generosity that I think are carrying us through this pandemic. I heard that there was a piece on IndieWire a couple months back, right when COVID started, that was talking about how finishing the film had been really impacted by COVID. Can you talk a bit about that and that process?
Well, when the lockdown happened in Ireland, we were just in compositing. We were just finishing up the other departments, and luckily enough, compositing allowed us to review everything online. People were working from home, and it was kind of lucky that the lockdown didn't happen in pre-production and when we needed to be working as teams, in the studio. So we just got away with it, really.
It was really right down to the wire. We recorded the music the week before the lockdown happened, and we'd done the orchestra just before, so we worked with the Irish band Keela here in Ireland just a week before the lockdown. And then the last bit that we did, which was kind of interesting, it was also a little bit of a pity, was Aurora Ackness sings a song in the movie, and she was supposed to come to Dublin the week that the lockdown happened, so we had to record her, and she was in Bergen in Norway. Mm-hmm. And she recorded like this, and it actually worked out great. But I would have liked to have been there to hear her in person, but it worked out fine.
Can you talk a little bit more about the music as well? I think I'm a big fan of your films, and especially the animation style, which I really want to talk about. But I was really moved by the songs and the score in this film. Can you talk a bit about creating that musical world?
Well, we'd worked with Bruno Coulet on Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea, and on both those movies, the collaboration with Keela, which are like a traditional Irish music band, but they kind of mix up world music and everything. So that collaboration was really good. So that was a natural continuation because the movie is supposed to feel like a continuation from those movies in terms of style visually and also in terms of music. But then the idea to have the song as a kind of from Aurora as a kind of centerpiece in the movie, as a kind of pause point, kind of came during storyboarding, and we kind of decided to have like a little moment where we could just see Robyn, the main character, enjoying being a wolf, enjoying her new experience, and something that was only like half a page in the script became a kind of tentpole for the movie, and that sequence kind of became the main sequence that we kind of worked around. There's before the song and after the song in terms of how the movie kind of plays out, I guess.
And the way that Bruno and Keela work is really beautiful to see. Like Bruno is, has an overview for the whole film and composes everything and works with the orchestra, but then at the end gets Keela involved, and it's much more organic. It's more like a big jamming session, and they come up with ideas on the spot, and it's really, really flowing and organic. And I think that's where you get a lot of the energy, and really spontaneous creative moments in the music in that live record at the end.
What's really special in Wolfwalkers is we finally, we had so many crowds, which is quite daunting in terms of animation, but we were able to put lots of cameos in. So there's caricatures of Ross and myself, but also at one point in the early part of the movie, there's a load of buskers playing on the street, and they're actually all members of Keela. So most of Keela are represented in animation form on screen if you watch out for it.
Is that the first time that you've done that in any of your films?
Yeah, they've never shown up in any of the films. In the previous films, we had little guest stars here and there in the background. Yeah. Sometimes we caricature some members of the crew and they end up in the background, our friends who helped out and stuff. But this was the first time we had an opportunity to basically put everyone in because there's so many crowds. And it's pretty hard work to animate so many crowds, but it's more fun if you add in a few friends and families and so forth.
I was going to ask you a bit about the visual style of the animation, which I was reading an interview, and it was described as pre-Celtic megalithic art, and then mashed with like Studio Ghibli, and I just love that combination. And yeah, I just would love to hear more about that world and the continuation, as you were saying, through to this one.
Well, I'd say the visual style is probably, like Tomm was saying, that this is like a third film in a trilogy, and the visual style in Secret of Kells and the visual style in Song of the Sea are kind of in the same ballpark, and then Wolfwalkers would be a continuation of that. So a lot of the ideas that we would have formed in the first two films is carried on in this, but I think what we really wanted to explore in Wolfwalkers was the two contrasting styles. Like Robyn and the Town is a very austere kind of like woodblock, hard-edged, angular style, and then everything connected with the forest, and Mebh is very sketchy and organic and loose and curved, and so there's a huge contrast there, and that was, I think, the big challenge in this one compared to the others.
It was also an opportunity to do a lot of stuff that we wanted to do in previous films and we weren't able to do for different reasons. And now we had such an experienced crew and we had a couple of movies under our belt. We just wanted to throw everything at it and make a big triple-decker sandwich of all the visual language that we'd played with before. So I hope people who enjoyed the first two movies will recognize that we've really gone to town on this one. But being able to use the different ways of drawing the characters or drawing the backgrounds as part of the storytelling was something that first came to us as an idea when we saw The Tale of Princess Kaguya. I actually saw it in Tiff, and at the time I was doing interviews like this telling everyone that I thought hand-drawn animation had a language that was expressive and could communicate something that computer-generated animation couldn't. And then I saw Kaguya and I kind of was knocked backwards and realized, this guy, like Takahata, had gone even further than I'd even imagined. And so we took that as a starting point, that we wanted to be as expressive and as sketchy and to use everything that hand-drawn animation could do to help tell the story. So hopefully we got close to Ghibli level.
I personally think you did. In terms of the story, when did you land on this? As you said, the dichotomy of Kilkenny, where you both grew up, and the world of the wolves and Mebh's world. Can you just talk a bit about that process and how this story came to be?
Well, Tomm and myself came up with the basic bones of the story years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, a long time ago anyway. And even in the initial concept, there was this contrast of two worlds, that Robyn comes from this quite austere world of rules, where she's oppressed and she's forced into a position that doesn't allow her much freedom, and then meets Mebh along the journey and is exposed to this natural world where you follow your instincts, you're allowed to be who you want to be and be free. And so it made sense for the visual style to follow those two worlds, to reinforce the fact that in the town it looks like a cage. There's lots of bars and lots of things trapping her, and then out in the forest, you know, she can. It's got energy, it's got instinct, it's loose. So the story evolved in the same kind of path and at the same process as the visual style, you know.
I think what was interesting for me was that we kind of had the idea to treat the Puritans and the English people coming over in a more geometric way and a looser, kind of more, let's say, Cagua approach to the wolves and the Wolfwalkers. But it was only during research that we saw that in 1645, around the time the movie was set, that the kind of propaganda that was being pumped out was these woodblock prints. They were like these, like, you know, it was the fake news of the day, right? It was the tabloid journalism. And so it was kind of cool to take some inspiration from those pamphlets, those woodblock pamphlets. And so we even went as far as having it that, you know, if you do a print and then it moves a little bit, the colors can be a little bit offset. So we even have the characters sometimes have the color a little bit outside the lines and stuff to make it look like it's a very cheap, quick woodblock print effect, you know. So we were able to push our original idea even further based on our research.
That's incredible. I know, and I know exactly what you mean by those wood blocks too. And now that you've said that, can see it in the film as well.
Yeah. So the town is all kind of geometric and as if it's been like printed over and over again. So there's a kind of a little bit of a fade in the texture and stuff. So that's why I hope people get to see it on a big screen as much as possible, because we put so much love into every. Well, if you watch it on a good screen at home, you'll be all right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Maybe everyone can start investing in, you know, at home projectors and the like.
I have a projector at home now. It's pretty good. Yeah, they're getting better.
And in terms of casting, I mean, the two young girls are so incredible, and I also just really love their friendship as well. It's such an unlikely one, but becomes so beautiful. And then of course you just sort of the star power is that you know, Sean Bean as the hunter, as Robyn's father. Can you talk a bit about casting and finding those the right voices, really?
Sean Bean was easy because we were doing his voice as we were drawing him. We were sitting there doing our terrible Sean Bean Game of Thrones impersonation.
Could you maybe do that for us right now?
I don't think I could live with myself if I did that.
Insulting to Sean Bean.
Yeah, we would say things like, one does not simply ask Sean Bean to be the main character in your cartoon and stuff.
But he's got a great accent, and it fitted the character of Bill perfectly because they come from the north of England over, so it kind of had to be Sean Bean, or I don't know who we would have gotten if we couldn't have gotten Sean Bean.
Someone doing a Sean Bean impersonation. But then Honor is from Cambridge, so she's kind of got a south of England accent naturally, but she did her audition tape with a Northern English accent and blew us away. We were so surprised that she wasn't actually from somewhere up north. But some
good.
things.
That was good.
Yeah, I was impressed there.
Grim up. But then Sean would say things sometimes to help her when we were recording, which was nice because she's an amazing young actor. I mean, she's already been in so many things, and she does a pretty good accent. But few things she was getting wrong, so he was kind of coach her on the accent, which was amazing. And we were really lucky with Honor, but that she was available because she's in so much demand. But the real kind of discovery for us was Eva, who hadn't actually acted before. I remember Ross first heard her audition and was just like, this is it.
Yeah, she has this amazing energy and like her voice has this kind of huskiness as if she's been like roaring all her life. Yeah. So yeah, she just jumped out in the casting tapes as just having the right energy. And she does an amazing growl. And then what we were really surprised in the actual recording was that she was able to reach these depths where she was crying, you know, over the loss of her mother, and it would have hair talented. Standing up in the back of your neck. She's really talented, yeah. She
was only like 8 years old, which always blows me away whenever we cast kids, because think about how long it takes to produce an animation. But when we first had the first idea and we're first writing it, she was a baby, and so she was just at the right age at the right time to record the voice. And of course, by now she must be 11 or 12 because it takes so long to make the movie. But she was just so talented, and it was great to work with her. And then Simon McBurney as Oliver Cromwell, as Lord Protector, was I think that was a kind of a glitzy story how we met him. He was at the premiere of The Breadwinner. He was a guest of Angelina Jolie, and they'd been in a movie together, or Brad Pitt and him had been in a movie together, and Nora met him at the premiere. I wasn't even there. in London, and she came back saying, I found your Lord Protector, this guy's going to be perfect. And of course, we realised then he was a kind of character actor who specialised in evil British baddies. So he would be perfect.
He really got to play one of the biggest evil British baddies, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's been this, I guess now, it's been over a decade since, well, at least since Secret of the Kells premiered in 2009, and now this is, as you're saying, kind of the final triptych or the final piece of the triptych. What's that like? What's this, journey been like, and now that we're here?
It would be more satisfying if we were in Toronto, and like really, it would be so nice to have had that kind of circle. But I feel good. I feel like we put a lot into this to really sign off on a good note, and I'm sure lots of echoes of the stuff we discovered and evolved in terms of style and themes from these movies will continue into what we do next. But I feel pretty happy with it.
Yeah, and then to watch. To look at the 3 films in succession, you can see like the evolution of style and everything for ourselves too. I think maybe it's just a pity that animated films take so long, because Secret of Kells started when we were
in our early 20s.
So
yeah,
it seems like
it feels like our entire career has been these movies, but we've done things in between.
Yeah.
But I also feel like our personal style and the themes that we wanted to explore have matured over the movies. So one of the things we had to be careful of actually was not getting too sympathetic to the Sean Bean character as we became middle-aged men. So to try and remember it was a movie for kids about kids.
Yeah, because our scriptwriter Will Collins is also a middle-aged man too. So you have 3 middle-aged men, and naturally we're going, what would Bill do?
Yeah, we were totally sympathetic to the dad character.
And then we're like, this is not about Bill.
But thankfully, there's plenty of young nieces and nephews and people like that to keep us on track.
Oh, well, I really wish that you could be here as well. It's been a lovely thing that Tiff has been able to be a small part of so many of the films. So yeah, thank you so much for being here and for taking the time. Tomm, Ross, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I want to say hi to my Canadian friends and family who might be watching this. It's a pity I'm not there with you, but if you can see this online, hi.